Well, the sun is setting and it's getting darker as I speak, other than the light I've got on me. And it seems maybe a little apropos to share just a couple thoughts about the Pendragon Cycle on the Daily Wire Plus. Before I go anywhere with this, first I'm going to tell you there's no spoilers really at all. I'm just going to give my general impressions for the 7 episodes. I will tell you the backstory that I was a big Daily Wire supporter. When I first heard this, I didn't know anything about the books, but I was excited about it. Then things started trickling out. It seemed to be getting delayed. I can see why, because a lot of post production work went into this. I don't know when they originally intended to release it, but I feel like it got delayed. And so I'm not a Daily Wire hater. I'm not a Daily Wire lover. I'm just kind of right down the middle. I mean, they're doing great work in many things, blah, blah, blah. And I do subscribe to it, at least for now. So I'm going to start with some grades for what they're worth. I would say on the good side, production value for the most part was very good. I would give it an A. The locations were, I guess, as authentic as you can get for the most part. I'd give those a AA minus. The cinematography was really good. I mean, it was 100% professional, looked great, sounded great. Now we get to the more important part, which is the story and the acting. To me, and I haven't read the books, and I don't know if this represents one of the books out of many, or I should probably know that, but let's pretend that myself and a lot of other people didn't read the books. We're just watching this. To me, in 7 hours roughly of TV, to me, there was maybe I don't know, 2 hours of story, and then plus the battles, which there was obviously the big battle in the 7th episode. But the first 2 episodes were kind of more interesting, I think. Unfortunately, when they got to introducing Merlin, I think Tom Sharp is probably maybe the actor's name. To me, he had no charisma at all. Those hawk eyes, those weird colored eyes, I think that was a big problem because it made him look sort of inhuman, which maybe he is sort of inhuman. But he just, to me, again, all personal opinion, he has no emotion, no passion on his face. He's either super mundane. Occasionally he yells, and I don't know. He just didn't do anything for me. Having said that, I think a few, and again, I don't know names, but in general, I guess if I had to give the acting an overall grade, and of course that can be dependent on the directing and on the writing and all that stuff, I guess I would say B minus. There were clearly some extras that had like one line or two lines that they just found locally, and they just said, hey, we need you to say this line. At least that's how it felt to me. Costume design, I'll go back to something else. I think that was pretty good, probably a solid B. The story, just for me, it just dragged, and I couldn't really recite the story for you. First 2 episodes, it was before Merlin was born. They had his mom, who was a warrioress, and things happened to her. His dad was in it briefly, and I think he was a good actor. I missed him when he was gone, and he came back in one of the later episodes just briefly. The timeline, it just seemed to jump a lot. I know that's on purpose, but there just wasn't enough going on. They would establish long, wide shots of some majestic thing, kind of the Lord of the Rings-ish feel, and then they would cut to the close-ups, and there were a lot of talking, a lot of exposition scenes, just people standing around, riding on horse, sitting in a tent, standing in a tent, moving pieces around a risk board, sort of. And one episode, I timed the scenes, and you typically, you get maybe a minute and a half, and things are moving and dialogue's flowing. And there were several scenes that were 2.5, I think, to 4 minutes, which to me is too long, especially when it wasn't super compelling dialogue. The acting was not magnificent. So not super impressed with that. Writing, I guess, was okay. A lot of, when you're writing in that old English, not old English, but like, the 13th century or medieval times, whatever, you can take some liberties. And occasionally they would use modern day colloquialisms, which were not good. But it was a lot of the stuff you hear in these kind of movies in terms of speeches and dialogue and discussion. There were some things. I'll focus now on episode 7, the big battle. I think the episode was maybe an hour and 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes ish, getting tired. The first, I think, 25 minutes, they talked, and then they talked some more. And then there were like these meaningful shots with swelling music, which the swelling music is another thing, a little much. And obviously the theme was borrowed from Game of Thrones, as was the opening to a certain extent. And so they got ready to fight, and then Merlin came and got out his bard and sang a song like for 4 minutes. He's got a great voice. I don't know if that's his voice. And maybe if you were a super fan of the show, it would be meaningful to you. It just seemed like there was just no sense of urgency. And then they get ready for the battle. They have a plan. They're going to split up. So the battle was pretty impressive in terms of they had a lot of close-ups with gnarly fighting like you see. Again, kind of probably better than a B movie, but not like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or anything on that scale, just because, they spent a lot of money, but they still didn't have the budget to really go crazy. So it was okay. The weapons were probably very realistic, because the swords were just kind of average. They had, of course, some like King Arthur type swords, and bows and arrows were pretty rudimentary, which is probably realistic. But so they get ready, they show these wide shots, which is a bunch of CG, fine, and then they cut to the close-ups and they're giving them their last commands, and they start to fight. And in the meantime, Merlin is off watching the fight from, I don't know, a half mile away or something. And the young lady who is the sister of his wife, so it would be his aunt, is there. Hasn't aged at all. I don't know if there was something in here about the women never aging, because she didn't look any older than when he was born, and his mom, who was in the final episode, looked maybe a few years older. And so they talked, and they were watching the thing, and then they cut to the battle, then they cut to the sneaking around the back, and they're about to get ambushed. They show the bad guys with their bows and arrows, and then they cut away to something else, and then they cut back, and they're fighting, but there's no bows and arrows going off. And then, well, I said no spoilers, but someone comes back with a big prize, and you have no idea how he got it because you didn't see him do it. Some people could call that suspense or surprise. I would call it something else. And then Merlin talks some more while watching these guys do, and then he does his like Merlin power, which is to put the whole show in slow motion. And I'm talking like the slow-mo guys, slow motion, like, I don't know, it's got to be more than 240 frames a second. It feels like 480 frames a second. And during this time, nothing really happens to speak of. And then it comes back to normal, and he never uses any Merlin powers, which I guess is kind of the point of it, because he tells the king, if I do this, they're going to want me to be king and not you to be king. And the king realizes this. But yeah, so I guess sort of anticlimactic. And then they have a whole ending thing to set up, which I guess would be a second season if they do a second season. I would be very surprised if they do. unless they do it with like sock puppets or something, because very expensive. And it took basically 3 years, I think, since they announced this, 3 or 4 years, which may not be unusual, but for all the anticipation, um, I was I was underwhelmed. I think because I was expecting it to be really, really, really good. Having said that, their previous movies have not been great. This is definitely a step up in terms of ambition, the look and the feel and all that. Writing, I guess if I had to grade it, I haven't read the books again, maybe a B minus. Acting about the same. Direction, okay. I think just okay. It felt like a, as I told some other people, it kind of felt like a very, this is going to sound funny, not funny, but it was like a very, 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 very ambitious student film made by a student whose parents had a ton of money. And so they were able to have all these toys and make it look real nice. But the acting just, to me, wasn't great. So it was sort of a misfit because it looked so good. Production design was good. Costumes, all that stuff was par excellence. Maybe not quite, but very good. But there was a mismatch there. If they would have made it on the cheap and it would have looked like this, then you would have said, oh, wow, for $10 million for all of these shows, that's really good. But, $100 million isn't that much for 7 episodes of an hour each. That's like $14 million per hour, which in TV land is not extraordinary. It's a lot. So if you haven't seen it, if you have a desire to see it, maybe you'll like it more than I did. I don't really know too many other people who watch the whole thing other than YouTube people, and I frankly am surprised how much they seem to like it. So maybe I'm missing something and I'm the outlier here. But the few people who I know who did watch parts of it were not impressed. They were less impressed than I was. So very valiant effort. I hope it gets a lot of views. I hope people will basically pay money, I guess, for them to make it, because that's what we subscribers do. We're basically funding this. I don't know how else they're going to make money off of it. So, valiant effort. I wouldn't really say well done because I would not watch it again. I don't know that you could probably pay me to, but it's, yeah. And now look how dark it is behind me. Like I said, probably apropos for the nature of this review. For what it's worth, good try. Maybe something a little less ambitious next time. Pull her down to your 100-minute movie. Spend $5 million. Get a great script, a great cast. Come see me if you want any of those. And that's all I have to say.